This episode is sponsored by Buzzshot, PG's Playhouse, RECON, and Patreon supporters like you. Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod, Key Moments of Season 10 episode. I'm Steve Ewing, the editor of the show. On a typical episode, hosts David Spira and PG Law explore immersive gaming from all angles, with guests who really know their stuff. In this episode, we thought it would be worthwhile to look back at Season 10 and highlight the most interesting, entertaining, and impactful moments. Season 10 was an excellent mix of makers, owners, creatives, and we played the RECON virtual game live. Let's dive into this season's key moments. This season started with a bang as we welcomed Will Shortz on episode 1. As the longtime crossword editor for the New York Times and puzzle master on NPR's Weekend Edition Sunday, Will was full of amazing stories. We learned how he landed an early job at Games Magazine, and then later in life went to great lengths to maintain his streak of playing ping pong every day. But as a crossword fan myself, my ears perked up when David asked about how the crossword has evolved under Will's leadership. Here is that moment.
Crosswords, like so many things, change with time and culture. What are some of the key things that you changed about the New York Times crossword puzzle when it became your responsibility?
Well, when I was interviewed for the job, I was asked, if you were the crossword editor, what would you do differently? And I said, the first thing I would do is what I will keep, and that is the intellectual caliber of the New York Times crossword, because I didn't want that to change. But what I would do, number one, I introduced bylines on the weekday puzzle, which had never been done before, because I thought the puzzle makers deserved the credit. And I also knew that if they had their names on the puzzle, they would be encouraged to give me their very best work. So it improved the quality of the puzzle at the same time. And then I wanted the crossword to reflect everything that's going on in the world today, including our language and culture and events. So it's not just bookish things from the dictionary, but it should have things that you learned in school long ago and classical culture, but it should also have TV, movies, popular music, sports, and everything going on in the world, because I want the crossword to reflect life as it is today, life and language as it is today.
Pop culture and slang.
Absolutely. One of my early puzzles had the answer, "No way, Jose." And I remember someone from Bulgaria wrote me that he was an English as a second language speaker, and he had never heard the phrase, "No way, Jose." And he thought that was inappropriate to appear in a crossword. And I thought just the opposite. That's just a familiar phrase people know, so that should appear in the crossword.
When do you decide if a slang is popular enough to warrant inclusion? Are crossword puzzles today using skibbity or Riz or, whatever the slang that these Gen Zers are using?
I have two tests. First of all, do I know the term? If it's sunk into my brain, it's probably sunk into a lot of people's brains. But it's not just me. If I don't know something, I will go online and see how many hits it gets on Google, or I can ask friends. So I don't have to know everything that appears in the New York Times crossword. And I'll tell you another story. Years ago, when Britney Spears was big, someone sent me a puzzle in which the middle 15-letter answer across the diagram was, "Oops, I did it again." And this had been a number one hit just in recent weeks. And I thought, I wasn't sure that "Oops, I did it again" had cultural significance, but it would last a long time. There's a lot of number one songs that come and go, and you hardly even know anything about them. So I told them, I'm not ready to accept this puzzle now. Let's wait 6 months and see if this has entered the popular discourse. And of course, as we all know, it did. So 6 months later, I accepted the puzzle and ran it.
That's a really good approach to that, instead of just outright rejecting, kind of putting that one on the back burner for a minute.
Exactly.
At this point in your life, what do you feel makes for a great crossword puzzle? And how has your opinion shifted over the course of your career?
Interesting. I think the bedrock principles haven't changed. A crossword should reflect the language and culture to the extent that we have a common language and culture. And it's really hard to have a puzzle that is right for everybody, because the language and culture of an 18-year-old is going to be different from someone who's 70, 80, or 90, or even 40 and 50. So I like to have a little of everybody's culture in the puzzle. And that's why it's good to have lots of different puzzle makers. If you have a very diverse group of contributors, then that's going to make better connections with solvers. So what makes a good puzzle? It's partly the day of the week. Monday starts in the New York Times is pretty easy. It builds up to very hard on Friday and Saturday. I'd like almost everything in a Monday puzzle to be something that you know and clues that you can easily figure out. And Friday and Saturday should really test your solving ability to the extreme.
Will is the definition of influential in the puzzle world. If you're addicted to the games app like I am, episode 1 is a must listen. I had been a casual fan of Stephen Sondheim's musicals for years, especially Sweeney Todd and Into the Woods. But it wasn't until episode 2 that I gained a whole new appreciation for his genius. Our guest was Barry Joseph, who has written a fantastic book called Matching Minds with Sondheim. It explores Sondheim's love for puzzles and parlor games, among other nerdy pursuits. David was also a guest on Barry's podcast, chatting about jigsaw puzzles, which prompted Barry to reflect on Sondheim's habit of gifting Stave brand jigsaw puzzles to his actors on opening night.
So as you were building out this jigsaw puzzle, which was the poster of the show you were in, you were going to discover that your initials were in it and it was customized just for you. And that first gift from Sondheim of jigsaw puzzles stuck. And every show after that where he gave puzzles, from what I've seen in my documentation, was another puzzle from Stave, all the way up through the last production when he was alive, which was for Company, which was going to open in March of 2020, was stopped during COVID, and then opened up just weeks before he passed away. So there are a few dozen, I believe, jigsaw puzzles that are all posters of his shows that he gave those opening nights to members of the cast and crew.
Wow, what treasures.
Truly.
So for me, the question isn't just, oh, how cool this is or how interesting. It's for me to understand, why did Sondheim choose to do this? There's so many things he could have chosen to give to people. And I interview in the book people who were performers who received those. And they say to me, of course that's what he gave us. Of course that's the part of his life he wants to share with us. Creating that moment where I can have this brilliant coming together from chaos into order, a phrase he often referred to, where you have all the jigsaw pieces spilled on the table, there's no sense to them at all, and bit by bit, they come into order. And at the end, when that last pieces fit into the only place it could possibly go, that moment of order gives you this brilliant moment of clarity. And designing those moments of clarity is part of what I think inspired him, not just in jigsaw puzzles, but in all of his puzzle design.
And on your show, I talk about this in more depth, but for me, I love giving custom wooden jigsaw puzzles as gifts. It's one of my favorite gifts to give. And I also am, as I describe, a stress jigsaw puzzler. And for me, there is something really beautiful about solving jigsaw puzzles while I'm under a lot of stress or mourning a loss or something like that. It's something that I always return to when I'm really down. And it is because it's finite and you can just progressively make order from chaos. And it makes me feel good. It's a crutch for me when I really need it. And so hearing his perspective on it, that really resonated with me in a very strong way. And I don't know when the jigsaw puzzle episode of Matching Minds with Sondheim, the podcast, will come out, but that episode was really an incredible pleasure for me to record with you.
And I love getting to hear your thoughts about it as well.
A quote that you brought to my attention, which is from Sondheim's 4 principles that underpinned all of his work, which is content dictates form, less is more, God is in the details, all in the service of clarity. This resonated very strongly for me. It's sort of a incredibly concise consolidation of all of my thoughts on what we're trying to do with all of the different things that we make. Can you give me any more context around Sondheim's perspective on this idea? Because for me, this just sounds like good game design. It's really good communication. It's good writing. It's good making things for an audience.
So there's a few ways we can go here. The first one for me is, okay, Sondheim has come up with instructions for lyricists, the first 3, and the one that wraps on top of them all. Did he do the same thing for games and puzzles? And on one hand, he didn't. But on the other hand, you can bring together things he said to construct them and analyze his games and puzzle designs to pull them out. And that's part of what I tried to do in my book. The bulk of my book is looking at Stephen Sondheim's life from his interest in play, getting people to play, playing with other people. But the last part of the book is teaching people what I think of as his design lessons, both for games and for puzzles. So for me, I look at those four and say, okay, content dictates form, less is more, God is in the details, all in the service of clarity. And I ask myself, what would he have said he wants to teach others about how to design puzzles? And when I look at puzzles, I come up with 12. What you just described, David, is how Sondheim wants us to understand how he approached his lyrics as he developed writing them professionally over decades. He didn't have the same level of rigor in the way he approached games and puzzles. In those, he was more interested in exploring different formats that inspired him. And we can see some connections and some echoes, some rhymes, as it were, with how he designed his lyrics and music for his shows. But I think you'll also see many other approaches as well, and much more variety of approaches in how we thought about puzzles and games.
Barry's book and podcast are called Matching Minds with Sondheim, and they're available now. And I can confirm there's at least one puzzle hidden inside the book. I love our episodes that feature escape room owners, mostly because I love origin stories. Our guests for episode 3 were Will and Kim Rutherford, owners of Escape Artist Greenville, which is home to such highly rated escape rooms as Castle Floofendor and the Chimera Core Saga. With these gems in their offering, surely they started off the business with a mountain of experience. Well, not exactly. Have a listen to Will and Kim's origin story.
So we know that you got your start building elaborate sets in your home. So how did all of that culminate into the two of you creating Escape Artist Greenville together?
Yeah, so in 2015, we went to a home haunters convention. And these exist. It's a convention full of people that make haunted houses in their home.
If you haven't been, they are very fun.
It's a bunch of people that are there for the art, right? They really are. They're not there for the business. They're all there sharing secrets and talking about how they made some skull or skeleton and all the tricks. And so it's a blast. And we attended a class on someone who had built a 3-minute escape room in their garage. And that really got the wheels turning. And on the long drive home from Ohio, I turned to Kim and I was like, we should do that. I'm sick of packing this thing up every November 1st and saying goodbye to it, until next season. What if we could leave it open year round? How good could it be then, right? So that was kind of the idea.
But that wasn't the first escape room you'd ever played, though, was it?
We decided to open the escape room business. We had never played an escape room. We just felt in our hearts that we could do it. And we knew that we needed to go play games. So we did. We didn't open without playing games. On that car ride home, we said, okay, let's do this. Let's look into it. Let's see if we can do this. And then we played the games. So yeah, no experience.
Okay, so you made the decision to start the business and you're like, let's go do some R&D.
Yeah, we had run a t-shirt business. It's pretty much the same. That's actually where we found Room Escape Artist is we're like, how do you find escape rooms in 2015, right? Which was difficult to do. You couldn't just type in escape room into Google. It took some searching, especially around the Southeast.
Yeah, I was back in those days managing the map and I was scouring the US for escape room companies. So I probably found Escape Artist Greenville and put it on the map back then.
We're honored.
Probably putting us on the map.
If it was me, it was very early days.
Yeah. It did take us about a year to open. So we made that decision. And then it was Will is a planner. I don't know if you picked up on that. He is an engineer. So he does love a good spreadsheet. And I'm a not planner.
Chaos gremlin.
Yes, chaos gremlin. Exactly. I would rather jump in and see what happens and then pivot if we have to. So there is a funny story about when we actually finally took the leap. We had been looking at opening an escape room in a box truck because it was 2015 and we didn't even know what we were doing. And that didn't really go the direction we were wanting, couldn't find one.
Nobody would ensure that.
So I came home from work and I said to Will on my lunch break, I'm like, hey, there's this commercial property for rent. I'm going to go check it out on my lunch break.
Yeah. And I said, cool, just don't sign a lease. Let me look at it before you sign the lease.
So I came back and I said, I signed a lease.
Those are famous last words.
Yes.
Yeah.
This place was just a tiny little, I don't even remember, maybe 200 square foot, maybe.
Yeah.
And I did the calculation. I actually did it wrong the first time, but it wasn't that far off. We needed 12 customers per month to pay our lease. So it wasn't like I went wild and crazy, and it was a 1-year lease. So that was it. That was honestly the kick in the butt we needed to get started. And we did everything wrong. We built our game without having the city approval, without a business license, without anything. And then I just walked into the city building and I said, 1 business license, please.
And they said, what are you doing in here? We were the first escape room in the city. They're like, nope, absolutely not. Are you locking people in and all those things that people thought back then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, wait. So you built the whole thing and then you went and applied for the business license and they said, absolutely not. So then what steps did you have to take to make the situation right?
I don't know if you've ever heard of zoning. So that's a thing. We didn't know about it. We had to go through a zoning commission. I don't know exactly what the word is that you used to describe it, but we had to sit in what felt like a courtroom, and they called us up and they had us plea our case for changing the zoning so that we could allow indoor entertainment in that building. And then I really think the city suspected that we were maybe chaining people up. I just don't know. They reacted very poorly to us wanting to open an escape room. And so they had us go to this safety committee, which is typically reserved for higher risk businesses such as nightclubs and things. And we went into this room that had a very small little desk in the middle of tables that were sort of in the shape of a U. So you're surrounded on 3 sides by all of the important people in the city, except for the mayor, but everybody else, the chief of police, the fire chief, the zoning commissioner,
multiple city council people.
And we had to explain to them what our safety protocols were. Remember, we're in a 200 square foot space at that point, right? So you are always 2.5 steps from the door. You are never far from the door.
If you are flammable and have legs, you're never blocking a fire exit.
Exactly. And you have one employee to every group, and that employee is on the other side of the door at all times. So very low risk situation. And so we had to prove this to the city that we're not going to hurt anybody. We have good safety protocols. And I think they quickly realized that they had misjudged us and the attitude started to change. In fact, after the meeting, somebody came up to us and said, "Oh, we're really sorry we made you do this. We just didn't really understand what escape rooms are." But there was a moment where the chief of police just out of nowhere goes, "What on earth makes you think that this business will be successful?"
He looked us dead in the eye and said, "No one's going to pay money for this." And I'm like, is that your job, sir, as the chief of police, to tell us that we're making a poor business decision? Is it safe? That's, oh gosh.
Doesn't everybody get their business advice from police officers?
This was 2015 though, nobody had even heard of escape rooms. So you really had to pave the way for any future escape room hopefuls because they probably never played one. So I totally understand their point, and I'm glad that they came around to it. Did any of those people ever come check it out after it was open and actually come play?
I'm not sure that the chief of police has, but a lot of the people who were in that room have played the game. Yes.
They did come play the game.
If you're like me and believe there should be more escape rooms featuring puppets, be sure to check out Castle Floofendor at Escape Artist in Greenville, South Carolina.
Buzzshot is a company that is committed to 2 things: reliability and constantly expanding their offerings for their customers. One example of this is their event manager. This is a new feature, and the event manager is designed to help support the shift to larger group games and the need to manage corporate bookings. These are really important things for escape room businesses to make the most of their weekday bookings. And also, it's something that allows escape room companies to host really large groups. This is the kind of thing that Buzzshot empowers escape room creators to do when they roll out new features. Layer on top of that those new features are backed by the reliability of a company that has been around for years and is constantly working to make sure that their platform does exactly what you want when you need it to do it.
Nick Moran, creator of Phantom Peak, uses Buzzshot, and he says that we needed to work with the most reliable and robust platform available.
And Nick is always exacting in his demands of his products and services. Streamline your marketing and grow your escape room business. Repod listeners get an extended free trial and 20% off your first 3 months with no setup fees or hidden charges. Visit buzzshot.com/repod, that's REPOD, to learn more. Link and details in the show notes.
Over the course of 3 days each year, over 10,000 trivia fans descend on the tiny town of Stevens Point, Wisconsin, for the world's largest trivia contest. It's run by our guest for episode 4, Jim the Oz Oliva. The contest runs on the local college radio station for 54 hours straight, and teams have only the length of 2 songs to call in their answer. The competition is cutthroat, and in the weeks leading up to the event, teams will try anything they can to get into the mind of Jim, who for years wrote the majority of the quiz questions. David decided to dive a little deeper into one of those methods.
Now, I've also heard rumor that you have to retain all of the garbage from the packaging and foods that you have and the media you're consuming, because people will go through your garbage if you put it out before trivia. Is that true?
Yes.
See, because they have to crawl inside his head. They have to figure out how he's thinking.
Regular garbage, I throw out.
Seems reasonable.
But anything like once we use a package, we'll throw it away. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The garbage in the trivia writing room stays until after trivia, and then it gets thrown out.
That makes sense. Now, I have also heard tale of people following you around the grocery store and keeping tabs on the items you are buying.
Yes. So one year I was on my way to the station at about 10:30 Friday morning, and I called up the station manager and I said, "Hey, I'm on my way to the grocery store. Is there anything you need me to pick up?" She had just recently had a baby and she was breastfeeding. And she says, "Could you buy me some breast pads?" I said, "Sure, not a problem." So I go in the store and I bought a bunch of M&Ms and Tums and aspirin and breast pads. So I get up in the line and I'm buying it, and I look behind me and there's a trivia player 2 people back. And I'm getting into the line and she's taking my stuff, and I look back and he's gone. And so I didn't think anything of it. I got my stuff, went to the station, and Sunday night after the contest, when we were giving away the trophies, the team that he was on won a trophy. And so they came in and he got the microphone and he said, "Well, I have to tell a little story." So Friday morning, I'm in the grocery store and I'm standing in line behind the Oz, and I look down and I see that he has a box of breast pads. And I thought to myself, do I need to get breast pads? Yes, I do. And he went and bought breast pads.
Wow. But this is when the contest is actually active. So it's not like you're stocked 365 days a year.
Oh, don't be so sure. You know, people do watch what I have in the grocery cart. One year, we had a lot of spam questions. And I don't know how it all started.
You mean like spam, the canned meat product, not spam as in email spam?
Right, the vomit-flavored food that I don't know why anybody would eat it.
I love spam.
Okay, well,
I'm a spam aficionado.
I'm sorry. And I just threw away a can of Spurky, which is turkey spam.
I just learned a thing.
My wife said, "Are we going to use this?" I said, "No." She says, "Well, how old is it?" I said, "Oh, it's got to be 20 years old." So she says, "Oh my God." I said, "Yeah." So we threw it away. But the year that we had the spam thing, we asked about maybe 10 questions during the contest about spam and like, where's the spam museum and all of this stuff. So the week before the contest, at the time we had a trivia kickoff, which was, we had a band come in and play. And so my co-writer and I, John, wore sweatshirts with spam printed across the chest. That was on a Friday night. By Saturday at 11 a.m., you could not buy a can of spam in Portage County, Wisconsin. And Wednesday of that week, I received a registered letter from an attorney down in Austin, Texas, who said that I had to cease and desist with the spam activities because it was cutting into the popularity of this spam off that they have in Texas every year.
You were disrupting their supply chain.
Well, I know they thought that I was that we were going to have a spam off up here because all of a sudden we're selling so much spam in Wisconsin. And
you were doing a competing contest. And
exactly.
That's why they had sold out of so much of the spam.
Right.
This is not the only time stuff like this has happened.
Oh, no.
I've heard tale of you basically knocking websites out by sending them too much traffic during trivia.
The hug of death, the Reddit hug of death.
Yes. If you're going to put up a website, make sure you get some kind of server that can handle getting bombarded.
Ain't that the truth?
You got to warn them ahead of time.
I remember it was early on in the life of Google. And all of our searches that are done in Stevens Point go through Appleton, Wisconsin. And oh my God, there was like a big deal in California to see what was happening in Appleton, that they were getting bombarded. They couldn't handle it. So they learned about the contest that year. That was way back, about 25 years ago, 38 years ago.
So now you know what to get PG for Christmas. The woman loves spam. To learn more about this year's trivia contest coming up in April, go to 90fmtrivia.org. On episode 5, we welcomed escape room owners Steven and Stevie Christoph, as well as their parrots, Jack and Elle. Their company is 62 Escape in the Chicago and Milwaukee area, where room escape artists recently had another successful tour. The Steves are incredibly thoughtful and deliberate about the business and management side of running an escape room. I feel like this episode is required listening for anyone looking to get into the industry. Here's a taste of episode 5.
Now, let's talk a little bit about how your games get built. My understanding is that it's a pretty small team doing most of the work. So who is involved in design and construction for 62 Escape?
Like we addressed earlier, when it comes to design and construction, a big part of it is myself and Stevie. And then we have a guy, Patrick, that works very closely with us on the electronics side. But I mean, you're kind of looking at the whole team here.
Oh, just the two of you building all of your 20 games.
We've been deeply invested in all of them. Yeah.
That's incredible.
From the concept side, Stevie ends up being my fact checker, my hone me in kind of person. When we started design, it's usually just me arbitrarily spitting out nonsense for 2 months until I find something that seems like it's going to resonate. I'll kind of build out the story and build out the main narrative of what we're going to try and accomplish. And then at some point, she'll tell me, I don't know that I know what you're talking about anymore. And that'll signal me to hone it all in. Once I develop the primary narrative, I'll start working on the overall space design while she starts to think of puzzles that are going to fit into that world.
Mm-hmm. I have to hone Steven sometimes on his ideas because he has grandeur ideas and they're all great, but sometimes they're too great. And I'm like, people might get lost in that one. But yeah, the two of us, I think as a team works really well, where he is great at making just really cool concepts. And I'm not great at that, but boy, do I love puzzles. I'm a huge puzzle nerd. I've always been a big puzzle nerd since I was a kid. I play with Rubik's Cubes. I've played pretty much every escape game on cell phones that's available. So once he comes up with the overall idea, that's when I get to become the mad genius and fill in the puzzle parts. He also comes up with puzzles too, especially when I end up getting stuck on a puzzle that doesn't integrate well. He's always the one who helps me out on getting better integration of puzzles. And then, of course, I make almost all of our props and puzzles. When people play it, it isn't our employees in the back pressing a button. There's a few of them where they have to, but almost all of it is something where when they set it down or they do it, it actually solves it. So I have to integrate that into the puzzles to make sure that happens. And then the wiring, yeah, I don't touch. That's where Patrick comes in.
For us, a big part of the design concept when it comes to the puzzles themselves gets rooted in my knowledge of arcade machines. I've interacted with and fixed at this point thousands of commercially built arcade equipment. I've seen the right way to do things, the wrong way to do things, and the fix it on the fly way to do things. And we try and build to that standard. When we're building the set itself, it really just depends on time and space, who we're going to work with on the set itself. We're set designers and builders on our own. We do scenic design, we do scenic work. We've been hired to do that work, and we've hired out to do that work. It all really just depends on how much is on our plate at the time. We've worked with some really incredible partners when we need to build sets and environments, and we've done everything from scratch in-house for other times. It really just depends on what's on our plate and how much we're able to do in-house or delegate. Delegating oftentimes being one of the harder things, because it certainly necessitates, at least in the world of what we do, a lot more planning, because the things can't change on the fly if I'm hiring out the set. And since we designed the game and the puzzle flow and everything else, all of that has to be completely finished and ready to be integrated for us to hire anything out. So a lot of the times we end up doing it in-house.
Listen to the rest of episode 5 to learn what it's like to grow up in a family entertainment center, as well as their adventures on the TV shows Holy Moly and Face Off. If you're an educator or a parent, episode 6 is for you. Our guest was Adam Bello, creator of the company Breakout EDU. They sell digital and physical kits to schools that borrow from escape room concepts to teach kids in a memorable way. But are kids motivated to tackle a challenge if there's no tangible reward? In this clip, David asks Adam about the need for incentives in educational games.
I have seen some of the older material around Breakout EDU encourage like candy or having prizes in there. What's your feeling on that at this point?
I'm very anti-candy in the boxes. I think that literally one of the first things we did when we had our first offsite team retreat was devise what we called, originally they were the reflection cards. Now they're the 4C cards. That's something else that comes in the box. It's what we would recommend locking in the box. So in the box, we have 4C cards, and the 4Cs are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And those are the skills that we want students to really focus on. These cards allow them to explore each of those concepts with questions like, if you were to create another lock of this game, what would it be? So that's critical thinking and creativity, et cetera. And it also allows them to explore things like, how could you be a better communicator? And then one of my favorite ones is actually, how would this game work if you didn't play verbally?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's super fun. We actually just sold a whole bunch of kits to and digital access to the School of the Deaf. And again, just really interesting use cases for customers all over the place that, of course, we weren't designing things for. But the 4Cs are running throughout the entire library of games. So it's like a deck of cards. There's 52 different options inside this 4C deck or reflection deck originally. That's what we recommend putting in there, because I think it takes the fun and it solidifies it into, oh yeah, this was a growth experience for us. This was something that focused on our SEL skills or our 4C skills beyond just the academic puzzles and the escape room experience.
I love that you're forcing students to do a post-mortem, but encouraging those analytical skills, not only towards themselves, but about the group in particular. And honestly, like when you're a kid, getting positive feedback from your peers really means a lot. Kids like aren't that great at complimenting each other. So I really like that you built that into the experience.
Yeah, it's super powerful. And I will tell you, I mean, just anecdotally, I wish I had at this point, 10 years in, there's probably hundreds and hundreds of emails that we get probably every year where teachers are telling us anecdotal stories about the kid that gets picked last for gym or the kid that gets ostracized because they are either too smart or kids don't think they're smart. And those kids are always contributing in different ways, where sometimes the super academic kid is not able to help in the puzzles because they're such rigid thinkers in some ways. And the kid that is on the spectrum and looking out the window or whatever has the different way of thinking and solves the game and breaks the logjam. And that's such a great feeling to have all of these kids be seen in a different light.
I love that.
A good escape game should feel like a heist almost. You know, everybody had their like moments and their specialties and you all came together and made it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. And I also like the removal of the prize, the tangible prize. I have rarely seen a puzzle game or puzzle experience improved by having a prize at the end. I think usually it's best when the prize was the journey you had.
I 100% agree. And to be honest with you, having clever we broke out signs and then clever we did not break out signs, like we have one that says better lock next time or like so close but not close enough, you know, like those types of tongue-in-cheek things. Yes, they have them in a lot of escape rooms, but we try to do them themed and branded to our games specifically. And we tell the kids, we celebrate the journey, we celebrate the learning, regardless of whether you break out or not. It's all about the experience. And you're going to walk out smarter and you're going to walk out feeling challenged in a way that you hadn't when you first sit down and do it.
I love that. Although I do still love getting candy in escape rooms.
Yeah, candy's great. Candy's great, but not in schools usually.
Adam's after credits story is one for the ages. It involves a demolished parked car and suspicious bus contents. Adam thought his company was over. Just listen to episode 6 all the way through. You'll thank me later. Reaching the number 1 spot on the Tropica rankings is no small feat, but that's exactly what our next guests did with their Montreal area game, Magnifico. Jonathan Driscoll and Sasha St. Denis of Escaparium returned to Reality Escape Pod to discuss many things, including their new games, revamping old games, transforming their lobby. They're just always very busy. Magnifico's premium experience comes with a premium price. Here, David asks Jonathan and Sasha about their pricing strategy.
Magnifico is not a cheap date at $165 Canadian, roughly $118 US per ticket at time of recording. I was very skeptical of the price before playing, and not at all skeptical by the end of the game. Talk me through your thought process on the pricing of this ultra premium experience.
As I spoke about in the RECON talk, I think pricing is one of the most important things. It allows us to do these type of experiences.
So this is your RECON 2025 talk, which is available on the Room Escape Artist YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly. And I spoke about the importance of pricing. To be able to do experiences like that, it's very obvious that you need to price it accordingly. The most obvious one is to pay for the set and all the time spent on doing the entire experience, which this one cost us over 1.4 million, which is about $1 million US. So we had to pay for that. And the operational costs are our staff. And we also wanted to start paying our staff a little more. But we started off at 130 just to get the ball rolling and seeing what people would say after. And then we slowly moved up. And sometimes we would just increase our prices just to be able to pay our employees more. And this was something even for our staff, it was a little difficult to understand that in the end, it has to be the customers that pay for the employees, right? The money doesn't come out of thin air. The money has to come from somewhere. And we wanted to start trying to give a salary which would make sense to have a career at Escaparium and not just in construction, but also as actors and stuff like that. And I think for our entire industry, that's something that's really good as well. Just for people to be able to say, hey, I could be an actor, you know, a full-time actor as a career at an escape room. That's pretty damn cool. And that's something that's pretty important to us and something we wanted to do. So this was part of the reason to go up higher. We had already experienced with Wardrobe and Cathedral, And I think it was definitely an easier step to get there, but this was definitely a big step. We had people saying, you're not going to catch me alive paying that kind of money for this experience. But also we were able to permit ourselves to try it because we had all these other experiences. The worst that could happen is, it doesn't get booked as much, but it was something for the future that was also important because we want to know, can we do this in the future? Is this something that's sustainable? So it was the pricing that we had to do after making the calculations. Now we're at 165. I'm comfortable where we are right now. And I'm very happy with the salaries that we're giving to our employees. And I think the experience that the people get, we're always there repairing everything. Every Monday, I think every experience is really top tier when people come.
So I can infer that from the fact that you have increased the price a few times, sales have been very good.
Oh yeah, it's really good. I would not have thought they would have been as good as they are.
And I have to imagine that the sales aren't just good for the game Magnifico, but they are cascading down into your other games in the building.
Oh yeah, 100%. Just to give a few statistics, if I calculate from January to August, because that's the statistic I remember when I had to calculate for the tourism office. And then if I compare it to January to August of last year, 4% of our bookings were from the US, and now it was 8%. So we doubled in tourists from the US. The European went up 3 times, I think. I don't remember the exact percentage though, but European visitors went up 3 times as much, which helps a lot. And it also helps a lot for our tourism office. It's something that we could show them. And there's a lot of subsidies that are also related to people coming in here. And I also think for the industry in general, to make it more normal for people to travel just for escape rooms is something very good for everyone. Everyone putting in the effort to do these kind of crazy experiences. I think this is something that's very good for the entire community as well. So yeah, we're really happy with the results this year.
You'll have a chance to try Magnifico when you join us at this year's Reality Escape Convention in Montreal, August 16th and 17th, 2026. Get your tickets today at realityescapecon.com. Returning guest Rita Orloff was joined by writer Lauren Bellow on episode 8. Together they produced the Golden Lock winning play-at-home game, The Morrison Game Factory. But it was far from the first premium box experience Rita had created. If you've played The Light in the Mist or Ministry of Lost Things, you know the quality of games she produces. Rita also has a lot of experience on Kickstarter, where games are the most successful category. That said, success is not guaranteed. In this clip, Rita reveals her approach to getting funded on Kickstarter.
I think there's a lot of pieces that come together to make a successful Kickstarter project. And part of that is having a completed game that people have played and can attest that it exists, that it's fun to play. Like, I don't launch anything until it's done. I've already sent some preview copies to reviewers, so we have testimonials and people who have played it. Another aspect is just making sure that it graphically looks good, that you have good photography and very clear information, and also that it explains what the game is in a way that is comprehensible to people.
People know what they're buying.
Exactly. And also, we show all the components, even though we don't necessarily show a detail of every single component because we don't want to spoil certain aspects of the game, but we do show you a picture of like, well, this is what you're getting in this box. And I know there have been some puzzle games that have been hesitant to do that for spoiler reasons, which I understand, but people want to know what they're buying when they're giving you their money, especially when it's a product that they're not going to see for maybe 6 or 8 months or longer. So just like being able to show people that all of these things are real and that we have a track record of delivering things and that they can have the faith that we will actually send them the things that they're paying for. I think that goes a long way. Just generally, transparency and communication makes a really big difference. People know that we are going to be posting updates every month, even after the campaign is over. a lot of folks run into trouble when they start not updating for a while, and then people are starting to wonder what's going on. Are you making this game? Are we going to receive it? And that also tends to drag out longer if the game is not feature complete by the time you're launching. Because if you're still designing portions of it after the launch, it's a lot harder to account for that timeline. And so that's another reason why we like to have everything finished before we launch, because by the time we launch, we pretty much can go into production shortly afterward. And we have a much better chance of delivering to people on time.
I really appreciate how much you have done in advance and how far in advance you communicate with us as reviewers that a product is coming. You have by far the most sophisticated approach to managing getting reviews for your tabletop games of any creator that we have ever worked with. And it makes our life a lot easier because Room Escape Artists' publication calendar is locked pretty far in advance. It's a slow-moving ship when it comes to that kind of stuff. So on behalf of Lisa, who manages all of that, thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate what you guys do and what other reviewers are doing. And I honestly often feel like, oh no, are they going to have enough time to play through this and like actually do a write-up? But it's because like sometimes we don't get our samples as early as we want to get them and be able to ship them out to everybody. So I want to try and be as respectful as possible of people's time.
Recently, I've noticed that you have sent copies not just to reviewers, but also to influencers. And I'm wondering if there is any difference in how interactions with influencers versus reviewers goes for you.
We're just experimenting at the moment. I can't say that I have a solid report back on that, but I don't necessarily think we'll be doing a ton of that in the future. I mean, like small influencers that will charge a fee to do a video, sometimes that's helpful for us because we can use that video content for ads. And it's like something that's harder for us to produce on our own. And I'm happy to pay for that. But I feel like most of the time, influencers don't really translate to significantly more traffic, which is the hope when somebody has a lot of followers, is that people would see it and then go to the page. But I think most of the time working with, whether it's reviewers or influencers, it's really more just like people who are backing up your concept as opposed to really bringing that much of a new audience.
That makes sense. Looking at the Kickstarter account for Post Curious, I noticed that you back a lot of projects, 133 as of today, and 120 of them are specifically within the games category, and almost all of them are puzzle games. Help me understand what you're exploring in supporting these campaigns.
I like to play games myself, so a big part of it is just, this is my own preferred form of entertainment, but it's definitely also, there's a little bit of market research there in that if somebody's coming out with a new product, I want to see what they're doing. And I do want to support other creators in the space. And there are people who have sent me prototype copies for feedback. And I'm happy to give it most of the time because I also just want there to be more good games out there. And we've talked about this with regards to the escape room industry. The more good games there are, the more enthusiasts come out of playing them. And so I would much rather there be other good games that people can play and then actually get hooked on the genre rather than play a bad puzzle game and then be like, oh, are they all like this? Well, I don't want to do any more of these.
If you're new to game collaboration and design, Episode 8 will kickstart your effort to finish your most recent puzzle project. Be sure to check it out. The creation of the Disney parks is filled with incredible stories. Doris Hardoon, our guest for Episode 9, was the keeper of many wonderful tales. She was so generous with her perspective on working at Marine World Africa USA in the 70s, and then as a Disney Imagineer in the 80s and 90s. Choosing one part of this fantastic discussion was very difficult, so I hope to tease your interest with the very beginning of her career retrospective.
Within Imagineering, you started out as a graphic designer and you moved up into show and set design and then into full-on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What was that path of career progression like for you? How did you go from not even realizing who you were interviewing with to becoming a leader within this organization?
There are multiple reasons and there are multiple circumstances.
There have to be.
Yes.
It's not a simple path.
It was not a simple path. However, I will caveat initially to say, truly, it was a different time. Back, if you want to count back 40, 50 years ago, the thinking process, the leadership individuals were very different. The focus that we had to do was very project-oriented focus, team structure, and I'm going to use the one word that I want to say is somewhat not the same today, and that is family. We literally were a family. We were tight. We were very small in volume of people, population of the Walt Disney Imagineering Company at the time. When I was hired on, we were maybe only 600-700. And then we quickly grew because of Epcot's needs to get what needed to be done. We grew into maybe 1,000 or 1,200 as the core group. And then, of course, we collaborated with many people, individuals and vendor consultants in Florida to get the job done. But to answer your question specific, for me to start as a graphic designer and then moving into where I ended up at when I left and retired in 2022 as an executive in charge of billions of dollars versus when I first began, my job was very humbly one of 4 designers assigned to the land pavilion. When I finished, Life and Health began, but they decided not to go forward with that pavilion. So I was shifted over to the land pavilion. And at that point, I learned so much from my boss, which is Rolly Crump. He's another legend for the company, amazing gentleman, knowledgeable. And I'm going to say it's back to what I experienced at Marine World Africa USA. People that didn't have an issue with letting somebody young or letting somebody without full experience, knowledge, polished, perhaps, have the opportunity to do the job. And I'm not one to stand in front of my friends and peers and say, me, pick me. I just was in line with everybody else standing there waiting for our assignment. And I never said no. Every assignment they gave me, I did it. And that's when my knowledge, beginning at Marine World Africa USA, I went deeper. I was given opportunities to create signage, graphics, physical environments, dimensional. I think there's a social media following with this one particular piece of artwork that I created for the Land Pavilion, which is for the Harvest Theater mural, the pre-show mural, that I decided to create it as a carpet. It's a 240 lineal feet-ish, one shot of a carpet that went into that pre-show space. And it is still there 40, 45 years later, looking like it was the day it opened and the day it was installed.
It's spectacular.
And the fun thing at all, David, I had no clue, but I had friends telling me, you have a following on social media for that piece of art because it had so much meaning. It was so representational of color, of style, of finish, the carpet finish no one has ever done before, and of that time period, of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I have to tell you this little sidebar, PG, you'd love this. We have to go out for sourcing, obviously, for the vendor as to who's going to make that carpet when it was finally approved by my executives back at WDI, Walt Disney Imagineering, that home base, when they finally approved the design I made. We had to go and search for the carpet manufacturing company. We went all over the place. And of course, Asia, China, and Hong Kong had all the big companies, 5 companies. And finally, we ended up with the one that rose to the top that could do the job, had the reputation, came in on the right budget, and they flew me The company flew me as a young little new designer. And this is like maybe, oh my gosh, 2 years into the company. They flew me to Hong Kong to be the art director, to work with this factory to make sure I wanted what I wanted, which was very specific to the colors and the beveling of all of the edges of the carpet. And this is a thread carpet. So each wool thread had the color. So it's not a printed color. So it lasts. And that's why it's lasted all these years. The company that ended up doing it, and I will say right off the bat, I didn't get any kickback, was my uncle's Taiping carpet, which was famous. It was totally famous. I don't know. You're too young, PG, to know, but maybe your mom or your dad might remember. But Taiping carpet is huge.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll ask them tonight.
Yeah, that was my uncle's company. And I showed up in the factory and he was there and he came up, what are you doing here? He had no clue. So that was cool. That was really a little nice connection family thing. I just accepted. They just said, do this. Okay, I'll do it. Do that. Okay, I'll do it. And I think in the end, as time went in my career, I pride myself in following through. And if I didn't know, I do my homework. I do my homework really well. And I talk to individuals who have been or who have done it so that I could learn from them. And that's how I continue to advance in my knowledge.
Later in the show, we learn about Doris's return to Disney in 2009 as executive creator-director and producer for the Shanghai Disney Resort. This is one of my favorites of the season. Don't miss episode 9. Zach Sherman will tell you he doesn't come from puzzles, he comes from comedy. You may know him as a frequent performer on the YouTube channel Epic Rap Battles of History, but more recently, he has created his own stage show called The Crossword Show. 2 guest panelists solve a crossword live on stage, and when they get a clue right, Zach does material about the words. The guests must attempt all the across clues before moving on to the downs. In exploring how the show works, our hosts were curious about how the guests were selected for each performance.
You've had so many incredible guests on the Crossword Show, including but very much not limited to Bomani Jones, Baratunde Thurston, Pete Holmes, and Lisa Loeb. What makes for a great guest on stage?
The thing I care least about with our guests is that they're awesome at solving crosswords. I don't think it's that fun to just watch someone like smoke a crossword. It's fun to watch the Tyler Hinmans and Paolo Pascos of the world blast through a crossword at superhuman speeds, but that's not what our show is. And so we've had people who get very into being good at the solve, and I always want to be like, I hope you can give yourself the grace of putting it down. It's not what the show's about. I actually think the thing audiences like most is when people say, I am bad at crosswords. I'm not going to be good at what I've been brought here to do. Everyone's expectations should be very, very managed. And then when you underpromise and overdeliver, not only do you look good, but I've seen it too many times for it to be a fluke that the crowd just will see somebody not solve, and then they get one at the top of the down round, and the whole room is like, yeah! And is really kind of beautiful. And like our crossword loving, sweet, gentle kind of audiences, it's very lovely to see these people like get behind someone figuring out where the crossword juice is and what it's all about. Another thing that I love, and it's a skill that I'm trying to cultivate more in myself, is just always having something to say that's at least a little bit interesting every time the rhythm of the show sort of like hits the ball back into the solver's court. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes I'll have solvers where I'll come to the end of some digression that I'm going off on that's the material and, you know, what the show is. And I'll say like, solvers, over to you. And people just sort of look at me and spread their hands and look a little like, I don't really have anything to say. And then I just have to keep working and being the host of the show and the guy who has things to say. So many solvers are generous, and when I kick it over to them, they contribute something. So those 2 things. Being upfront about your skills, not getting too hung up in the game, and then just having a thing to say when you're on a panel. I just like people being themselves. I think the circumstances are extreme enough that you don't really have to try and be funny. If you're a funny person, that's great. Be funny. It's like the joy of live performance is we're all here doing this and we're all experiencing the same things, and it unites us as a community. And so we're a team.
Help me understand from a design perspective why you're having the guests on stage instead of focusing on that audience interaction. You already have an audience filled with crossword enthusiasts. Why not just throw the questions out to them?
Audiences are really smart. And so if it was a group opportunity, we would have every one of our puzzles solved at the acrosses. So that's one reason. We are fighting this thing where I'm like holding the beach ball of the crowd's desire to show that they're smart. They all know the answers. And so I'm holding that underwater, and we have to like selectively allow them to, sorry for the mixed metaphor, blow off a little steam from time to time by being like, crowd, you guys get to yell this answer. 3, 2, 1. And I will report from the stage that you could really feel people are being like, God, finally, I've wanted to answer so many of these. Thank you for letting me. And then also, I just think that the show is so scripted. And so I think part of the joy of the show is getting to see all these different personalities engage with a crossword, which for a lot of people isn't something they do very often. And the thing that's the most alive and going to be different every time about the show is the unscripted interactions between me and the solvers. And for me, that's one of the most fun parts of doing it, is that X factor.
Interested in seeing the crossword show live? It's part of your ticket to this year's Reality Escape Convention in Montreal, August 16th and 17th, 2026. Tickets available at realityescapecon.com. Episode 11 brought us face-to-face with Blot, the official game for RECON Remote 2025. It was available to play for all Community, Pro, and Champion ticket holders who opted in. Blot was created and run by Mark Larson, who was a guest on this episode. Unique Trapman O'Brien and Lyra Levin join us as the unwilling janitors for the Bureau of Legitimate and Otherworldly Troubles. Let's hear how Mark kicked it off for our players.
It's not often they call in the janitors, but you happen to be in the area, so here you are at a secret facility in the middle of the desert. A burly man named Sergeant Hoskins escorts you down a long, nondescript hallway, explaining the mission. Someone or something has ransacked one of our top secret laboratories. They made a real mess of the place. We need you, the best janitors in the world, from the Bureau of Legitimate and Outerworldly Troubles to investigate. Figure out who or what caused this mess, and then apprehend them by any means necessary. Put an end to their destructive antics. The last door in the hallway opens to reveal a scientific lab, but unlike the pristine hallway, a strange gunky substance covers the walls and floor. Well, I trust you can handle this. I'll leave you to it. Good luck. The sergeant shuts the door behind you, and you hear a faint click as it locks. In the room, you see a freestanding chalkboard to your left, a table with beakers and test tubes to your right, and a small computer desk in the back corner. On the far wall, there's another door, and next to that, a metal shutter that has rolled down like a blast door, covering what would be a large viewing window. What would you like to do?
I've been waiting for this call to adventure my entire life. I knew I wasn't just a normal janitor. I immediately go to the lab table and take a look at those beakers.
Awesome. Absolutely.
I have not been waiting for this call. I am very much a normal janitor. And so I think my first priority is going to be, it looks like there's a bunch of stains on the floor. I would like to determine, it does seem like the colors of those stains correspond with what seem to be some beakers or things on there. So while you're going to those beakers, I'd love to look around for like some pipettes or anything I could use to scrape up that stuff and determine if it should go back into there or not. Is it the same thing? But strictly from a I just want to put it back in there so the floor is clean standpoint.
Yeah, let's check out those splotches on the floor first, and then we'll get over to the lab table. There's a lot of these weird splotches on the floor. You're right, they're exactly the same colors as those on the beakers there on the lab table. As you look at them, they look like dried paint, like a gunky substance. They all adhere to the floor. You can't really scrape them up very easily. There's no liquid left of them anymore. They're all dried there. But let's head over to that lab table. It's full of these beakers and test tubes which contain a variety of liquids. On the corner of the table, there's also a note, and that note reads, Laboratory test on subject 700-N. We are able to extract multiple colors of an inky substance. Each color reacts in a different way. We are able to extract multiple colors of an inky substance. Each color reacts in a different way. We have seen successful results using the following methods: heating, applying a heavy object at high velocity, viewing the substance upside down, and saying affirming or complimentary statements toward the substance. We found one color of substance to be resistant to all stimuli. We will continue researching. Lastly, supplies for experiments should not be left out. Clean up after yourselves. All supplies should be kept in the adjoining closet. Code is open.
Can I just start by telling each of the objects you're doing a great job? Because their first priority is cleaning. I'm just going to go to each of the splashes on the floor and say, you look great, you're doing a really nice job, and you're free to go now. You don't have to stay down here anymore. And just see if any of them respond to the positive stimuli.
Absolutely. You go to each of those splotches and you tell them, oh, you're doing such a good job. Great splotch, nice shape there. And as you do to all of them, you notice the green one in the back corner behind the chalkboard. And as soon as you compliment it, it loves that so much. It's so taken back by the compliment that it disappears entirely.
Seeing that success, I have in my mind that I'm an action hero now because the sergeant just gassed us up so well. And I try and do a handstand to view all of them. And I'm not good at this. I do fall over.
I can hold your leg.
Thank you. Yeah. My compatriot holds my legs and I look at each of them upside down.
You do a fantastic, what we call a two-person handstand. It's really great. Known around the world for how wonderful it is.
Dealing with splotches is all well and good, but what happens when they encounter the horrible monster at the end of the game? You'll have to listen to find out if they're able to face its terrible visage. PG's Playhouse is a room escape artist podcast that is growing in popularity with every episode. In our episode 12 holiday special, PG welcomed room escape artist team members Teresa Piazza and Andrew Reynolds to try their wordplay skills in a PG's Playhouse style puzzle with a holiday theme.
So you guys are like consummate puzzlers. I'm so excited to have you play my game. It's not Elf on the Shelf.
It's PG on a Ouija.
That's pretty good. So basically, this game just popped into my head because I was scrolling through social media and we'll get to that. So the way this game works is, Elf on the Shelf, that kid's kind of toy that magically appears around the house. It's an elf on the shelf. Well, today we are going to be finding random celebrities perched in all kinds of weird places around the house. And it's going to be along the same lines where the name of the celebrity and the location in the house, the item, the thing is going to rhyme. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
I'm ready.
I don't think I'm going to be that relevant in this. I think these two have...
I don't know any of my celebrities, so Andrew, I really hope you're up on your pop culture, my dude.
You know me, always got that TV on.
Yeah, People Magazine, open on your coffee table. Great, can't wait.
So, for example, if I had said, yours truly, your quizmaster, on a window cleaning tool, you would say...
PG on a squeegee.
PG on a squeegee. Actually, that I didn't make up. There is a very troll kind of Reddit thread that does this every year. This is a holiday tradition, and they take random survivors and they put them on objects.
Well, if all of the celebrities are escape room people, I think I'll do a better job.
Next up, you'll find him sipping gin and juice while sitting on the front steps.
So this is going to be Snoop Dogg.
I think we have to lose the dog part, though.
Oh.
Just Snoop on a stoop.
This is Snoop on the stoop.
There you go. I was going down like Doghouse. I was trying to do the before and after thing. I went too far with it.
Snoop on the stoop is what inspired this game because I was scrolling through TikTok and apparently Snoop on the stoop is a thing. It's like a little action figure doll you can buy.
Amazing. The internet is filled with treasures.
So next up, bet a lot of people would like this Transformers Vixen on this Bagel Pal.
Modern Transformers, right?
I'm guessing this is Megan Fox?
Yeah. On a locks?
Megan Fox on the locks.
Okay. Insane.
He normally lives in a trash can, but maybe for the holidays, he can rest on the Davenport.
Oscar the Grouch on the couch?
Oscar the Grouch on the couch.
Didn't know what a Davenport was. As soon as you said lived in a trash can, I already had Oscar the Grouch on a couch. I was like, hope I get this right.
Apparently it's used in like the eastern part of the U.S., I guess. I don't know. It was a famous brand back in the day.
It sounds New England to me. It sounds like some New England nonsense.
I am such a commitment phobe, I can barely commit to furniture. So I don't know anything about that.
Do you guys know what the difference is between couch and sofa?
No.
Probably where you're from.
Ding, ding, ding. Exactly. So they tend to use sofa in the UK, and in North America, we tend to say couch.
Subscribe to PG's Playhouse on your podcatcher today for even more punnery with repod guests, Survivor contestants, and many other hilarious humans. For the last 10 years, Lisa Spira, a room escape artist, has been tracking the growth of the U.S. escape room industry and publishing industry reports. For our Season 10 finale episode, Lisa describes the industry in terms of its growth during 2025.
Let's look at the numbers. How are the numbers looking this year?
The surface level numbers is that growth is flat. Everything is stable. And that has really been the trajectory for 3.5 years now. My industry report has said we have approximately 2,000 venues in the United States, 2,000 facilities where you can go play escape rooms. And it's been the same number year over year. So surface level, first highlight is the industry is stable, and that's the main takeaway. But there's so much more depth here. And I think that the trend that we're really seeing is a consolidation. David and I have been predicting that there will be a retraction in the market. We have been waiting for the closures to outnumber the new entrants into the market, the opens. And that hasn't really happened. But what I've come to realize in this year's report is that retraction is happening differently than we had imagined. The retraction is here now, but it's happening in the form of a consolidation. Companies are selling their assets to someone else who is taking over their lease and their games and whatever their assets are and continuing to run that business, perhaps enhance it, perhaps rebrand it, but not always. And oftentimes, the person taking over a closing escape room company is somebody who already owns and operates an escape room company. There are new owners coming in and taking over these existing companies that are, let's say, closing, but changing ownership. But what we're seeing more and more of is an existing company takes over a company that would have closed. And so we have that consolidation. And now we have the same number of facilities, the same number of places where you can go to play an escape room, but less ownership. The other trend that I wanted to mention is a shift in what an escape room is. Not only are we tracking the traditional brick and mortar escape rooms that we first started tracking when we started this directory, but over the past couple of years, we've added in escape room adjacent styles of immersive gaming, such as challenge arcades and Airbnbs that have escape rooms inside of them. And we've seen growth in both of these categories as well. We've also seen growth in FECs, family entertainment centers that include a permanent escape room installation. So what that means is we're seeing a bit of a shift in what an escape room is, and all of those forms of adjacent entertainment are contributing to our directory today.
So when you say a retraction, what do you mean exactly by that?
For me, when I'm thinking about a retraction, I'm thinking about less facilities. I'm thinking that we're taking facilities off the map because they have closed and Melissa is unable to find enough more to balance that. And therefore, there are less facilities where you can go play in-person escape rooms in this country. But instead, it's not that. It's not that retraction. It's stable in terms of count of venues.
And so since you've been tracking this, has there ever been a retraction, or has it been like since you've been tracking, it's rising numbers and then just for the past 3 years, it's plateaued?
No, there was a retraction. In 2019, The growth had leveled off to just 2%, and this is following exponential growth, 800% growth in 2016. So by 2019, 2% growth. During the pandemic, the industry did shrink, and there was a retraction. A 4.3% decrease through mid-2020, followed by a 7.5% decrease over the following 6 months through early 2021. So over the course of that time, there was that retraction. Then by mid-2022, things stabilized.
We were really expecting a much larger retraction. Even in 2019, before the pandemic hit, we had predicted a retraction. We actually believe that the government funding that came over the course of the pandemic reduced the impact of the retraction that was coming.
Why did you expect a retraction?
There were a lot of amateur operators who had opened in the 2014 to 2019 era. Just a lot of really mediocre companies and a lot of really bad games. We had a glut of terrible product on the market and a lot of owners who were very clearly in over their heads.
So a much needed correction in the market.
We have never really looked at the reduction in the amount of new companies and the reduction of companies as a singular metric as good or bad. It's not a bad thing if companies that have mediocre product are exiting the market. It is a bad thing when you have really great companies that are exiting the market. And we have not seen that exodus from the upper end of the escape room scene. So if we were to see that, then the retraction would be something that would be alarming, but it's not what we have been seeing. Another thing that we should probably look at is that as much consolidation as we're finding in escape rooms, we know that we're not finding all of it.
That's true. It's very hard to find because it's not always readily apparent that escape room venues are connected to one another. You have the big chains and franchises that have many locations and very clear branding. You know when something is an Escapology location, a The Escape Game location, a Breakout location. You can tell. And then you have smaller chains and franchises, an owner who owns 3, 5, maybe even 8 locations, and they have pretty clear branding. They have the same URL structure. One website lists all the other locations in their region or in the country. Those are easy to find. What's hard to find is when someone buys a location and doesn't change anything. They don't change the branding. They don't change the URL. They don't change the email address. But they bought it and they own it and they also own one in the next town over. And how am I supposed to know that those are connected? But we know this is happening because anecdotally we know, because we know people who have purchased these locations. We know people who haven't changed the branding. And so we know it's happening, even though when we don't know the individuals, we can't necessarily always see it.
And that brings us to the end of the key moments for Season 10. Season 11 is right around the corner, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you to our highest tier Patreon supporters, Derek Tam, Breakout Games, Escaparium, Pat Dupin of Olivier Escape, The Ministry of Peculiarities, Panic Room, Rex Miller, Mark of Keystone Escape Games, Byron Delmonico, Karen, Mystery Unfolds, and Andy Mincer. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. It means the world to us.
What do you get when you mix pals, puzzles, and trivia? That's right, it's PG's Playhouse, our newest podcast where you can play along with our guests through some games featuring a blend of wordplay and trivia.
Then I share an interesting bit of trivia, lore, or history based on the episode's theme.
If you've made it all the way to the end of the episode, you're still here, looks like you had a pretty good time listening, we would love it if you took that good time and left us a review. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It helps with making people find our podcast, and it even helps us with getting guests on the show.
And if writing a review is a bridge too far, just share the link to an episode that you like with someone who you think will appreciate it. Word of mouth, that is the thing that helps us grow. Thank you so much for supporting us, however you're doing it, whether it is on Patreon, with a review, or just sharing a link. We appreciate you.
This episode of Reality Escape Pod is produced by Teresa Piazza with support by David Spira and PG Law. This episode was edited by me, Steve Ewing of Stand Inside Media. Music by Ryan Elder, logo by Janine Proct. And all of this is brought to you by RoomEscapeArtist.com, your home for well-researched, rational, and reasonably humorous escape room and immersive gaming content and events.